Welcome to Peacetime Story, a place where your mind can rest and your heart can find calm. Here, every story is told with love, comfort, and a touch of mystery, designed to gently guide you into a world of relaxation and peaceful sleep. If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to subscribe and become a part of our Peacetime Story family. Together, we'll create a space where every night ends with calmness, comfort, and sweet dreams. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let's begin tonight's journey. Hercule Poirot and the Secret of the Sapphire Mirror. Chapter 1. The arrival at Harrington Manor, the carriage wheels churned relentlessly through the muddied lane, their rhythmic clatter a counterpoint to the symphony of the storm that raged overhead. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective whose reputation for unravelling the most intricate webs of intrigue preceded him like a herald, sat ensconced in the vehicle's dim interior. He adjusted his immaculate moustache with a gloved finger, a habitual gesture that bespoke his unyielding devotion to order and precision. His emerald eyes, sharp and unyielding, gleamed with the anticipatory acuity of a mind forever attuned to the subtle dissonances in the grand opera of human conduct. Poirot was a man of compact stature, yet his presence filled the carriage as profoundly as if he were a colossus. His psyche, a labyrinth of logical pathways, navigated the chaos of the world with the surety of a cartographer charting unknown seas. The invitation to Harrington Manor had arrived via a missive penned in Lord Reginald Harrington's own hand, a plea couched in the language of scholarly curiosity, beseeching Poirot's expertise in appraising an artifact of purportedly arcane provenance, the Sapphire Mirror. Acquired from a shadowy antiquarian in the labyrinthine souks of Cairo, it was said to harbour secrets that transcended mere aesthetic value, whispers of curses and concealed mechanisms that tantalised the collector's soul. Poirot, ever intrigued by the interplay of antiquity and avarice, had accepted with alacrity, though his little grey cells hummed with the intuition that more than scholarly appraisal awaited him. As the carriage crested the final rise, Harrington Manor materialised from the tempest's veil, its Gothic silhouette etched against the roiling heavens like an accusatory apparition. The edifice, a bastion of opulent antiquity erected in the waning years of the Victorian era, stood nestled amidst the verdant undulations of the English countryside. Ivy-clad walls, weathered by centuries of inclement climes, whispered tales of bygone splendours and concealed sorrows. Mullioned windows flickered with the intermittent glow of gas lamps, casting elongated shadows that danced grotesquely in the wind-lashed rain. The air was redolent with the earthy perfume of sodden soil, mingled with the acrid tang of wood smoke from the manor's numerous chimneys. Thunder rumbled, like the discontented murmurs of forgotten ghosts, while lightning rent the sky in spectral flashes, illuminating the manor's spires, as if the very elements conspired to herald impending doom. The carriage halted before the grand portico, and Poirot alighted with the grace of a man unperturbed by nature's fury. The butler, Mr. Jenkins, emerged from the oaken doors, a gaunt figure of some 50 summers, his hollow cheeks and shadowed eyes bespeaking a life of habitual subservience tempered by unspoken resentments. Jenkins was a creature forged in the crucible of domestic service, his psyche scarred by the perpetual humiliations inflicted by aristocratic caprice. A latent bitterness simmered within him, a resentment towards his employers that manifested in the subtle tremor of his hands and the averted gaze that concealed depths of unvoiced indignation. "Bienvenue, Monsieur Poirot," intoned Jenkins in a voice as desiccated as ancient parchment, holding aloft a lantern that sputtered defiantly against the gale. "His lordship awaits you in the drawing-room. The weather is most inclement this eve, is it not? Pray, allow me to take your coat." Poirot inclined his head, his gaze appraising the butler's subtle tremor, perhaps the mere chill of the storm, or the harbinger of deeper perturbations within the household. "Oui, mon ami, the elements conspire with a vengeance, but Hercule Poirot is no stranger to tempests, be they of the sky or the soul. Lid on, if you please." They traversed the vestibule, a cavernous space adorned with ancestral portraits, whose stern visages seemed to scrutinize the intruder with disdain. The air within was heavy, impregnated with the scents of beeswax polish and aged leather, an olfactory testament to the manor's venerable lineage. Jenkins ushered Poirot into the drawing-room, a sanctum aglow with the ruddy flicker of a roaring hearth. Persian rugs muffled their footfalls, and the walls were lined with shelves groaning under the weight of esoteric tomes and curios from distant lands. Lord Reginald Harrington paced before the fireplace with the agitation of a man besieged by invisible phantoms. A robust gentleman of 60 winters, his florid countenance framed by a mane of silver hair, he exuded the authority of one whose fortunes in the steel industry had amassed a treasury of rarities. Yet beneath this veneer of patrician assurance lurked a tyrannical disposition, a psychological architecture that manipulated kin and servants alike with the precision of a master puppeteer. His motives were often opaque, driven by an insatiable hunger for dominance that sowed seeds of enmity among those in his orbit. "Ah, Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective graces my humble abode at last," boomed Harrington, extending a hand that betrayed a faint quiver, as if the weight of unspoken apprehensions burdened his sinews. "Your punctuality is commendable amidst this deluge. Come, warm yourself by the fire. This sapphire mirror procured, under circumstances most clandestine, whispers of enigmas that beggar belief, curses, hidden compartments. I fear it may be more than a mere ornament for my collection." The mirror itself commanded the chamber's focal point, a grandiose oval artifact, its frame an intricate lattice of gilded filigree encrusted with sapphires that caught the firelight in mesmerizing prisms. The surface, a deep azure expanse, reflected the room in distorted, ethereal hues, as if peering into a realm where reality warped under the gaze of antiquity. Poirot approached with measured steps, his little grey cells vibrating with intellectual fervour. He traced a finger along the frame, noting the craftsmanship's exquisite detail. "It is magnificent, my lord, a veritable chef-d'œuvre of ancient artistry," Poirot murmured, his Belgian accent lending a melodic cadence to his words. "But tell me, if you will, who shares this manor with you on this stormy eve? For Hercule Poirot senses that the mirror's secrets may intertwine with the lives of those assembled here." Harrington ceased his pacing, his eyes narrowing as he enumerated the household with the detachment of a cataloguer inventorying possessions. "My wife, Lady Evelyn Harrington, a woman of refined elegance, though her spirit chafes under the constraints of our union. She is 45, with raven tresses and azure eyes that pierce like daggers, eyes that conceal fractures from years of marital neglect. Her motives? Perhaps liberation through inheritance, or the pursuit of a clandestine liaison that promises the warmth denied her here." He continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial timbre. "Our son, Arthur Harrington, a dissolute youth of 28, lanky and pallid as a willow in winter. His gambling debts gnaw at him like voracious vermin, fostering a desperation that borders on the perilous. Then there is our daughter, Eliza Harrington, a spirited maiden of 24, her golden curls framing a countenance of defiant beauty. She harbours deep resentment for my obstruction of her romantic aspirations, a match I deem unsuitable. Her mind is a cauldron of vengeful impulses, bubbling with the fervour of youth thwarted. Harrington gestured towards the door. We are also graced by Dr. Victor Moreau, a visiting physician and fellow collector, portly and bespectacled at 52. His envy of my acquisition simmers into something akin to covetous rage, for we have vied in auctions past. And Sophie Leclerc, our French maid, slender and enigmatic at 30, her doe-like eyes veiling a traumatic history perhaps linked to my own indiscretions. Her psyche bears the weight of secrets, motivating a quest for retribution. Finally, Jenkins, whom you have met, loyal, yet his civility masks opportunistic undercurrents. As if the heavens themselves punctuated this recitation, a thunderous peal reverberated through the manor, followed by a piercing scream that shattered the fragile veneer of civility. This assemblage, Harrington, Poirot, and the hastily summoned household rushed to the adjoining study, their footfalls echoing like accusations in the corridors. There, slumped before the Sapphire Mirror, lay Lord Reginald Harrington. No, wait, the narrative falters here in anticipation. No, the scream had emanated from the study, but upon bursting in, they beheld not Harrington, but, the victim was Lord Harrington himself. The script aligns. It was Harrington who lay lifeless. But in this expansion, let us clarify. The conversation had scarcely concluded when Harrington, mid-sentence, clutched his throat and collapsed. But no, the original discovery was post-scream. To align, as thunder pealed, the scream rent the air from the study adjacent. Rushing in, they found Lord Harrington slumped before the mirror, his form contorted in the rictus of agony. Froth flecked his lips, and an empty teacup lay shattered beside him. Its contents spilled in an insidious pool. The aroma of bitter almonds hung faintly in the air. Cyanide, administered in his evening tisane, a poison swift and merciless, masquerading as cardiac arrest. The mirror's surface, unmarred and enigmatic, reflected the horror in its sapphire depths, distorting the faces of the gathered into masks of feigned shock and genuine trepidation. Lady Evelyn clutched her pearls, her composure a fragile edifice over turbulent emotions. Arthur fidgeted, his alibi of a solitary walk in the gardens already suspect in Poirot's discerning eye. Eliza wept ostentatiously, yet her gaze darted with cold calculation. Dr. Moreau knelt to examine the body with professional detachment, perhaps too eagerly, his fingers probing for pulses absent. Sophie trembled, her hands bearing faint, inexplicable stains, clenched in the folds of her apron. Jenkins hovered at the periphery, his civility veiling a gleam of opportunistic satisfaction. Poirot knelt beside the body, his moustache twitching in concentration. Mon Dieu! Murder most foul, executed with the subtlety of a serpent's strike. The method, cyanide, insidious and irrevocable. But why here, before this mirror? The secret it guards may yet illuminate the perpetrator's shadow. He rose, addressing the assemblage with authoritative calm. Mesdames et messieurs, none shall depart this manor until the little grey cells of Hercule Poirot have unravelled this labyrinthine enigma. The storm without isolates us. The storm within shall be quelled by justice. The room fell silent. save for the relentless patter of rain against the panes as suspicions began to coil like smoke from the dying fire. Chapter 2. The Web of Suspicions. The pallid light of dawn insinuated itself through the heavy draperies of Harrington Manor, casting a spectral pallor over the opulent interiors that had, mere hours before, borne witness to the inexorable hand of mortality. The storm had abated to a desultory drizzle, yet the atmosphere within remained oppressive, impregnated with the acrid residue of nocturnal terrors and the unspoken accusations that hung like cobwebs in the lofty ceilings. Hercule Poirot, attired in his impeccable three-piece suit of dove-grey wool, with a silk tie pinned by an emerald brooch that mirrored his discerning gaze, convened the suspects in the library, a sanctum of intellectual repose, its walls lined with leather-bound volumes that exuded the musty aroma of forgotten erudition. The hearth crackled fitfully, its flames dancing shadows across the faces assembled, each a mask concealing the tumultuous psyches beneath. Poirot's method was deliberate, a symphony of inquiry conducted with the finesse of a maestro wielding his baton, probing the fissures in their narratives to expose the raw undercurrents of motive and deception. He seated himself in a high-backed armchair, his compact frame exuding an authority that belied his stature, and gestured for the interrogations to commence. "Mesdames et messieurs," he intoned, his Belgian accent lending a rhythmic cadence to his words. "The little grey cells of Hercule Poirot demand order in this chaos. We shall proceed one by one, unravelling the threads of this tragic tapestry. Remember, the truth, she is like the phoenix, rising from the ashes of falsehood." First came Lady Evelyn Harrington, gliding into the room with the regal poise of a dowager empress, her statuesque form swathed in a morning gown of ebony silk that whispered against the parquet floor. At 45, her raven tresses were artfully coiffed, framing a countenance of porcelain delicacy, yet her azure eyes, piercing as the sapphire mirror itself, betrayed fractures in her psyche, the remnants of years endured in a union barren of affection. Her psychological profile was one of refined embitterment, a woman whose spirit had been corroded by neglect, fostering motives rooted in the allure of unfettered wealth and the emancipation of a clandestine liaison. She seated herself with composed elegance, her gloved hands folded in her lap like a prayer unspoken. "Madame," Poirot began, his moustache twitching in concentration, "you prepared the tisane for your husband, n'est-ce pas? Describe, if you will, the ritual of this evening repast." Lady Evelyn's voice emerged as a silken thread, taut with controlled emotion. "As was my custom, Monsieur Poirot. I steeped the herbs in the kitchen at 7:30, adding naught but honey to sweeten his palate. Thereafter I retired to my boudoir, fatigued by the storm's relentless assault." Her alibi seemed unassailable, yet Poirot's keen eye discerned a subtle quiver in her fingers, a psychological clue, perhaps, of suppressed turmoil. A red herring materialized in the form of a silk glove, discovered near the study's threshold, its fabric alien to her wardrobe of Parisian couture. "This glove, madame, it is not yours?" Poirot queried, producing the item with a flourish. Her eyes widened fractionally. "Certainly not. Mine are of kid leather. Perhaps an intruder's mark?" The suggestion hung in the air, a deliberate misdirection that Poirot noted, for the glove bore traces of powder residue, hinting at a more intimate provenance. "The heart conceals many shadows, madame," Poirot murmured. "Your alibi. Corroborated by whom?" "By Sophie, who attended me in undressing," she replied. Yet later, when the maid was questioned, a hesitation in her demeanour suggested coerced loyalty, another layer in the psychological strata. Next entered Arthur Harrington, the dissolute heir, his lanky frame slouched in a posture of defiant nonchalance, his pallid complexion accentuated by the shadows under his eyes that darted like those of a cornered fox. At 28, he was a portrait of youthful dissipation, his psyche a labyrinth riddled with the gnawing vermin of gambling debts, amounting to a staggering sum that threatened ruin. His motive was crystalline: the expeditious inheritance of his father's estate to staunch the hemorrhage of his fortunes. "I was strolling the grounds, monsieur," Arthur averred, his voice laced with a brittle bravado. "The fresh air clears the mind, even in such weather." But physical evidence contradicted him. Footprints in the muddied garden path, too pristine and undisturbed for the deluge's fury, betrayed a fabricated excursion contrived post-mortem. "Mon jeune homme, the timeline falters egregiously," Poirot observed, his gaze unyielding. "You claim return at 8, yet the poison's insidious embrace took hold at past. Where were you truly during that fateful interval?" Arthur stammered, weaving tales of a clandestine rendezvous in the village tavern, a misdirection that crumbled under scrutiny, for the stable boy later attested to no such departure. His desperation emanated like a palpable aura, the psychological clue of a man teetering on the precipice of moral collapse. Eliza Harrington followed, her spirited entrance a whirlwind of golden curls and defiant posture, her 24 years manifesting in a countenance flushed with the fervour of youth suppressed. Slender and vivacious, her psyche was a cauldron of vengeful impulses, ignited by her father's tyrannical obstruction of her romantic entanglements. A penniless artist whose suit had been summarily dismissed. "I argued with father that very afternoon," she confessed, her voice trembling with theatrical pathos, tears glistening like dewdrops on her lashes. "Over my future, my heart's desire, he was unyielding, a despot in velvet gloves." A physical clue emerged, a torn scrap of fabric from her emerald gown, discovered perilously near the shattered teacup, suggesting her presence at the scene. Yet Poirot suspected a plant, a red herring sown by another's hand, to divert suspicion. Her motive burned brightly, revenge for dreams shattered upon the anvil of paternal authority. Dr. Victor Moreau lumbered in next, his portly frame encased in a tweed suit strained at the seams, his bespectacled eyes blinking owlishly behind thick lenses. At 52, he was a rival collector whose envy of Harrington's acquisitions had festered into covetous rage, his psychological profile a tapestry of intellectual jealousy, woven with threads of ambition thwarted. "I examined the body post-mortem cyanide, without doubt," he stated with professional detachment, his voice resonant with feigned solemnity. But a timeline inconsistency gnawed at his narrative. He claimed seclusion in his guest chamber, yet a housemaid's fleeting glimpse placed him near the kitchen at the pivotal hour. "Monsieur le Docteur, your expertise is invaluable," Poirot conceded, "yet envy, she is a venomous serpent. The mirror's allure, did it not tempt you?" Moreau perspired profusely, his motive laid bare: to possess the artifact's rumoured secret, a map to lost treasures of antiquity. Sophie Leclerc, the French maid, entered with the timidity of a fawn, her slender form quivering in her starched uniform, her doe-like eyes evasive beneath lowered lashes. At 30, her enigmatic beauty concealed a traumatic past, perhaps entangled with Harrington's indiscretions abroad, motivating a quest for retribution that simmered in her psyche like a dormant volcano. "I served the tisane, monsieur, but added nothing untoward," she whispered, her accent a melodic lilt tinged with trepidation. Faint stains marred her hands, ink she professed, yet Poirot discerned traces of herbal residue, a psychological clue of duplicity born from violated honour. Finally, Jenkins the butler, his gaunt visage a mask of servile deference, yet his hollow eyes betrayed suppressed rage from decades of menial degradation. His motive, a hidden legacy denied by Harrington's Machiavellian manoeuvres. "I was polishing the silver in the pantry, sir," he intoned, but a footprint imprint in the study's carpet matched his boot's distinctive sole, physical evidence overlooked in the initial tumult. Poirot paced the library's expanse, his footsteps muffled by the Aubusson rug, murmuring incantations to his little grey cells. The clues accumulate inexorably: fabric scraps, footprints immutable, inconsistencies in the temporal weave. But the Sapphire Mirror, the enigma incarnate, holds the pivotal revelation. What secret does it veil from mortal eyes? With the suspects dismissed, Poirot turned his attention to the artifact, his fingers tracing its filigreed frame until a subtle catch yielded. A hidden compartment sprang open, empty save for a cryptic note inscribed in faded ink. The reflection betrays the truth. Misdirection abounded, as Arthur's accusation of Moreau's theft echoed in the corridors, diverting the gaze from deeper truths. The web of suspicions tightened, each thread vibrating with the potential for rupture, as the manor's shadows lengthened into afternoon. Chapter 3. Shadows of the Past. The afternoon sun, a pallid orb veiled by lingering clouds, cast elongated shadows across the manicured lawns of Harrington Manor, mirroring the protracted deceptions that festered within its hallowed halls. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp foliage and the faint metallic tang of receding rain, an olfactory prelude to the revelations that Hercule Poirot sought to unearth. Undeterred by the previous night's macabre tableau, Poirot pursued his inquiries with the relentless precision of a horologist disassembling an intricate timepiece, delving into the psychological undercurrents that propelled each suspect towards the precipice of culpability. The manor, once a bastion of aristocratic serenity, now pulsed with an undercurrent of dread, its corridors echoing with the ghosts of unspoken grievances. Poirot, his moustache impeccably waxed and his emerald eyes alight with deductive fervour, retreated to the conservatory, a glass-enclosed Eden of exotic flora, where orchids bloomed in defiant splendour amidst the gloom. Here, amid the humid embrace of verdant fronds, he contemplated the mosaic of clues amassed thus far. The Sapphire Mirror, that enigmatic sentinel, loomed in his thoughts, its hidden compartment and cryptic inscription. The reflection betrays the truth, suggested a duality of purpose, perhaps concealing not merely artifacts, but the very sins of the Harrington lineage. "Ah, the past," Poirot murmured to himself. "She is a siren, luring the unwary to their doom. We must plumb her depths to illuminate the present atrocity." Resuming his interrogations with renewed vigour, Poirot summoned Lady Evelyn once more, her presence announced by the subtle rustle of her morning attire. She entered with the grace of a spectral apparition, her psychological fractures more evident in the harsh daylight. A faint tremor in her lips, a gaze that flitted like a caged bird. Poirot's probing revealed the shadows of her past, a clandestine liaison with a dashing diplomat, evidenced by perfumed letters secreted in her boudoir armoire. These missives, penned in fervent script, bespoke a passion starved by matrimonial indifference, her motive crystallizing. The widow's veil would grant liberation, and the financial wherewithal to pursue her paramour's extravagances unencumbered. "Madame," Poirot intoned, producing one such epistle with the delicacy of handling a venomous serpent, "these words burn with the fire of forbidden desire. Did not the prospect of your husband's demise beckon like a beacon in the night?" Lady Evelyn's composure cracked, a solitary tear tracing her cheek. "I harboured resentment, yes, years of neglect of being a mere ornament in his collection. But murder? Non, monsieur, my hands are unstained." Yet a red herring emerged. A misplaced vial of cyanide discovered in Arthur's chambers during a cursory search, momentarily shifting the accusatory gaze towards the prodigal son. Poirot noted this diversion, suspecting orchestration to deflect from her own vulnerabilities. Arthur Harrington was next, slinking into the conservatory with the wariness of a fox evading hounds. His pallid features, etched with the ravages of nocturnal vices, betrayed a psyche besieged by fiscal desperation and filial acrimony. Poirot confronted him with the unravelling of his debts, IOUs unearthed from a hidden drawer, totalling a ruinous £15,000, concealed from his father's scrutinising eye. The young man's alibi, already frayed, disintegrated further under the weight of a stable boy's testimony. No horse had been saddled for his purported village jaunt, exposing the fabrication. "Mon jeune homme," Poirot pressed, his voice a velvet blade, "these obligations gnaw at your soul like rats in a granary. Did you not envision patricide as the panacea to your pecuniary woes?" Arthur's bravado crumbled, his hands clenching into fists. "I needed the inheritance, it's true. Father's tyranny extended to my purse strings. But I am no poisoner. Look to Moreau. His envy festers like an open wound." This accusation, a misdirection laced with partial truths, hinted at Arthur's tampering with the guest chamber clock to obscure a petty theft of heirlooms, not the murder itself. His psychological clue lay in erratic outbursts, symptomatic of guilt alloyed with fear. Eliza Harrington burst in thereafter, her golden curls dishevelled as if tousled by inner tempests, her defiant gaze masking a vulnerability born of suppressed aspirations. At 24, she was a tempest in petticoats, her psyche scarred by paternal edicts that thwarted her elopement with a bohemian artist of meagre means. Poirot unveiled this phantom suitor as a red herring. The true grievance resided in a clandestine perusal of her father's will, revealing a patriarchal clause that favoured male heirs, consigning her to a pittance. "The torn fabric from your gown, mademoiselle. It whispers of proximity to the crime," Poirot observed, holding the scrap aloft. Eliza's eyes flashed with indignation, planted, no doubt, by that scheming maid Sophie. "She envies my station, covets what she cannot attain." This outburst peeled back layers, exposing a motive of vengeful equity, to dismantle the inheritance structure through her father's untimely end. Yet the fabric's placement suggested complicity or framing, a psychological tangle Poirot filed for later dissection. Dr. Victor Moreau lumbered forth, his portly silhouette casting a rotund shadow across the flagstones, his bespectacled eyes blinking with feigned innocence. A rival in the arcane arts of collection, his envy had metastasized into covetous obsession, his psychological profile a compendium of thwarted ambitions. Poirot challenged his timeline. The chamber clock, halted at the murder's hour, bore signs of tampering, gears misaligned by inexpert hands. "Monsieur le Docteur, your medical acumen would facilitate the administration of cyanide undetected," Poirot posited. "And the mirror's secret, a rumoured alchemical formula inscribed in its depths, did it not inflame your scholarly avarice?" Moreau mopped his brow with a linen handkerchief. "I confess the artifact's allure. Harrington outbid me in Cairo, but I sought only knowledge, not his life." His cuts, bandaged hastily, spoke of forcible entry into the mirror's compartment post-mortem. A physical clue intertwining envy with opportunism. Sophie Leclerc approached with the hesitancy of one bearing invisible chains, her slender form quivering, her doe eyes shadowed by memories unbidden. Poirot's gentle probing unearthed a traumatic tableau. A scandal in Paris years prior, where Harrington's advances had besmirched her honour, leaving her adrift and vengeful. "He ruined me, monsieur," she wept, her voice a fragile whisper. Cast aside like a tarnished bauble. Her hands, stained not with ink but with residue from cyanide-laced herbs pilfered from the apothecary, constituted damning physical evidence. Yet her psychological profile evoked sympathy, trauma-induced paranoia, manifesting in furtive glances and whispered imprecations. "I prepared the tisane, but innocence clings to me," she insisted, her motive for retribution a blazing inferno veiled by subservience. Jenkins, the butler, concluded the procession, his gaunt frame rigid with feigned obsequiousness, his hollow eyes gleaming with suppressed vitriol. Poirot exposed his grudge. A forged codicil to an ancestral will, orchestrated by Harrington to deny Jenkins a modest legacy from a distant relative. Footprints leading to the garden shed, where horticultural poisons were stored, cemented his proximity. "Your loyalty, monsieur, is a facade," Poirot declared. "Revenge for pilfered patrimony. Does it not poison the soul as cyanide does the body?" Jenkins' mask slipped, revealing opportunistic glee. "Years of servitude, sir. Humiliations uncounted. But I am no assassin." Returning to the Sapphire Mirror, Poirot manipulated its angle under the conservatory's diffused light, unveiling an optical illusion. Faint inscriptions etched into the wall behind, reflected only in oblique rays, incriminating dates chronicling Harrington's misdeeds, from Jenkins' disinheritance to Sophie's violation. "Ah, the sapphire deceives, yet in deception lies revelation," exclaimed Poirot. An ancillary incident, a sabotaged lantern in the corridor, nearly precipitating a fall, pointed to Eliza as perpetrator, a red herring designed to intimidate the detective. The motives intertwined like the conservatory's vines, each suspect's shadow lengthening with the waning sun as the enigma deepened into twilight's embrace. Chapter 4. The Gathering Storm. As twilight descended upon Harrington Manor like a shroud woven from the remnants of the day's pallid light, the tensions within its ancient walls crescendoed with the inexorable fury of an approaching tempest. The air grew thick with the perfume of impending rain, mingling with the faint acrid residue of the previous night's hearth fires, an olfactory harbinger of the psychological maelstrom brewing among the suspects. Hercule Poirot, that indefatigable sentinel of truth, sensed the perpetrator's mounting anxiety as palpably as one might feel the static charge preceding a lightning strike. With the finesse of a chess grandmaster manoeuvring his pieces towards checkmate, Poirot orchestrated subtle provocations designed to elicit behavioral clues, unraveling the fragile threads of composure that veiled the guilty conscience. The drawing-room, once a bastion of genteel repose, now served as the stage for this escalating drama, its sapphire mirror reflecting the distorted visages of the assembled in hues of ethereal blue. Poirot, his compact form ensconced in an armchair upholstered in faded damask, proposed a feigned séance. A misdirection cloaked in the guise of spiritual inquiry, intended to unnerve the culpable and provoke involuntary revelations. "Mesdames et messieurs," he announced, his voice a melodic baritone laced with Belgian inflection. "In the shadows of the past, the spirits whisper truths that the living conceal. Let us summon them, that the enigma of Lord Harrington's demise may be illuminated." The suspects gathered around a circular table, draped in ebony velvet, candles flickering like hesitant souls in the gloaming. Lady Evelyn, her azure eyes shadowed by trepidation, clutched a lace handkerchief with fingers that betrayed a subtle tremor, psychological evidence of a psyche fractured by guilt or apprehension. As the medium, Poirot himself, adopting a theatrical gravitas, intoned incantations in a sonorous whisper, spectral whispers seemed to emanate from concealed corners, engineered by a discreet accomplice in the form of Jenkins's unwitting assistants with hidden strings and echoes. Lady Evelyn paled visibly at these ethereal murmurs, her composure fracturing like fine porcelain under strain. "The voices! They accuse!" she gasped, her admission spilling forth. A partial confession of her liaison's depth, revealing letters that Harrington had discovered, threatening divorce and destitution. Yet she staunchly denied the poison's administration. Her motive, emancipation through widowhood, now laid bare, though tempered by protestations of innocence. Arthur Harrington, seated adjacent, fidgeted with the intensity of a man ensnared in his own deceptions. The séance's illusory apparitions, faint knocks mimicking ghostly entreaties, elicited from him a stammered revelation. He had indeed tampered with Dr. Moreau's chamber clock, not to facilitate murder, but to obfuscate the timeline of a surreptitious pilfering of family silver to settle a pressing debt. "It was folly, monsieur, born of desperation," he confessed, his pallid countenance flushed with shame. "But the cyanide! I swear my hands are clean." This partial truth served as misdirection, diverting suspicion momentarily from his fiscal imperatives. Yet Poirot noted the young man's erratic pulse, a behavioral clue indicative of deeper entanglements. Eliza Harrington's outburst disrupted the proceedings like a thunderclap, her golden curls whipping as she rose in indignation. "This charade is intolerable! The spirits lie! Look to Sophie! Her jealousy festers like a canker." In the heat of her vehemence, Eliza unveiled a hidden affair between the maid and Arthur, a clandestine romance that complicated motives exponentially, suggesting collusion or betrayal. A physical clue materialized, a sapphire shard, dislodged from the mirror's frame, discovered in Dr. Moreau's waistcoat pocket during the commotion, implying sabotage or theft. "You tamper with the artifact," Eliza accused, her defiant gaze locking with the physician's. Dr. Moreau, his portly frame perspiring under the candlelight scrutiny, defended with blustering indignation. "Absurd! I sought only to examine its mechanisms, a scholarly curiosity, nothing more." Yet his bandaged hands, cuts weeping faintly, bespoke forcible intrusion into the mirror's compartment, perhaps in pursuit of the rumoured alchemical secrets. His timeline flaw, already exposed, deepened. A housemaid's testimony placed him lingering near the study post-séance, his motive of covetous rage now alloyed with opportunistic greed. Poirot observed Moreau's dilated pupils, a psychological marker of deception under duress. Sophie Leclerc, quivering like a leaf in the gale, collapsed into sobs as the spirits alluded to Parisian scandals. "Enough! He violated my trust, yes, left me broken in that accursed city," she wept, her doe eyes brimming with the catharsis of unburdened trauma. Her psychological profile unfolded further. Paranoia, induced by past betrayals, manifesting in furtive alliances, including the affair with Arthur, as a means of leverage or solace. I handled the tisane, but innocence shields me. Ask Jenkins. He witnessed my preparations. The stains on her hands, now confessed as herbal residues from innocuous poultice, shifted from incrimination to ambiguity. A red herring, perhaps self-planted in panic. Jenkins, the butler, hovered at the periphery, his gaunt visage a mask of servile detachment, yet his eyes gleamed with the opportunistic fervour of one sensing shifting sands. Poirot confronted him with the footprints leading to the poison shed, eliciting a grudging admission. "I ventured there for tools, sir. Nothing sinister." But the séance's provocations peeled back his facade, revealing a deeper grudge. The Sapphire Mirror's compartment had once housed jewels pilfered from Jenkins' ancestral estate by Harrington, in a long-ago transaction shrouded in duplicity. "He stole my heritage, reduced me to this menial existence," Jenkins muttered, his motive for revenge now a blazing torch in the gathering gloom. As the faux séance dissolved into recriminations, timeline inconsistencies peaked. All alibis overlapped, save for a critical lacuna at 8:15, the poison's administration window. Behavioral patterns emerged as pivotal clues. "Eti murderer's post-mortem calm," suggestive of medical detachment, pointed obliquely towards Moreau. Poirot, pacing the room with measured steps, murmured incantations to his little grey cells. "The storm gathers, mes amis. One more night, and the deluge of truth shall cleanse this manor." Yet the evening's crescendo was not without peril. As Poirot retired to his guest chamber, a tisane prepared ostensibly for his repose awaited on the nightstand. Sipping cautiously, he detected the bitter almond tang of cyanide, a brazen attempt on his life, thwarted only by his habitual vigilance. The cup, analysed hastily, bore fingerprints smudged beyond recognition, but a faint perfume clung to it. Lady Evelyn's signature lavender, a red herring or damning link. The incident heightened the drama, isolating the household further as the external storm renewed its fury, rain lashing the panes like accusatory fingers. Misdirection abounded. Footprints leading to the manor's perimeter suggested an external intruder or desperate escape, yet the mud's consistency betrayed recent fabrication. Suspicions coiled tighter, each suspect's gaze darting with the wariness of predators in a confined lair. Poirot, undaunted, contemplated the sapphire mirror anew, its reflective surface a metaphor for the distortions of human psyche, veiling truths until the angle of inquiry shifted just so. The gathering storm, both literal and metaphorical, promised a cataclysmic revelation. As the manor's inhabitants teetered on the brink of exposure, their secrets unravelling like threads in a fraying tapestry. Chapter 5. The Revelation of the Sapphire. The following morning dawned upon Harrington Manor with a clarity that belied the tumultuous shadows of the preceding days, the sun's golden rays piercing the mullioned windows like lances of enlightenment. The storm had abated entirely, leaving the countryside swathed in a crisp autumnal hush, the air redolent with the invigorating scent of dew-kissed earth, and the faint, lingering perfume of wood smoke from the manor's chimneys. Yet within the ancient edifice, an electric tension permeated the atmosphere, charged with the anticipation of revelation and the dread of exposure. Hercule Poirot, that paragon of deductive artistry, had summoned the suspects to the drawing room, where the sapphire mirror loomed as a silent, omniscient witness, its azure surface reflecting the assembled faces in distorted, ethereal blues, a metaphor for the warped truths that had concealed the murderer's identity. The room was a tableau of strained composure. Lady Evelyn, her raven tresses impeccably arranged, yet her azure eyes shadowed by sleepless vigil. Arthur, slouched in a wingback chair, his pallid features etched with the weariness of sustained deception. Eliza, her golden curls framing a countenance flushed with defiant apprehension. Dr. Moreau, portly and perspiring, his bespectacled gaze darting furtively. Sophie, quivering in her maid's uniform, her doe eyes brimming with unspoken fears. And Jenkins, standing rigidly at the periphery, his gaunt visage a mask of servile anticipation. Poirot, poised at the centre like a conductor before his orchestra, adjusted his immaculate moustache with a gloved hand, his emerald eyes gleaming with the triumphant acuity of a mind that had orchestrated the symphony of clues to its crescendo. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot commenced, his voice a resonant baritone infused with Belgian precision, "Hercule Poirot has exercised the little grey cells to their utmost capacity, navigating the labyrinth of deception that enshrouds the murder of Lord Reginald Harrington. Poisoned by cyanide administered in his evening tisane, he perished before this enigmatic sapphire mirror, not by mere chance, but as part of a calculated symphony of malice, where every note of motive, clue, and misdirection harmonized towards a singular, insidious purpose. He paced with measured deliberation, the parquet floor creaking softly under his polished shoes. As he enumerated the tapestry of evidence, consider, if you will, the physical clues that have tantalized us. The torn fabric scrap from Mademoiselle Eliza's emerald gown, positioned too conveniently near the shattered teacup, as if inviting accusation. The footprints in the muddied garden path, matching Monsieur Jenkins's distinctive boots, yet their pristine state belying the storm's fury. Imprints fabricated in hindsight. The silk glove, alien to all wardrobes present. A deliberate plant to suggest the intrusion of an outsider, diverting our gaze from the intimate circle of betrayal. Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on each suspect to elicit the subtle flinches of recognition. Then the psychological clues, those windows into the soul's shadowed recesses, Lady Evelyn's regal composure, a fragile edifice masking the turmoil of a heart starved of affection. Arthur's palpable desperation, born of debts that gnawed like vermin at his conscience. Eliza's fiery defiance, a veneer over the vengeful impulses ignited by paternal tyranny. Dr. Moreau's scholarly envy, simmering into covetous rage. Sophie's quivering trauma, a legacy of violated honour. And Jenkins' suppressed bitterness, the residue of years endured in subservient degradation. The timelines, he continued, were a web of inconsistencies, all faltering at the pivotal juncture of 8:15, the window of the poison's insidious introduction, save for one ostensibly ironclad alibi that upon closer scrutiny revealed its fragility. Motives abound, mes amis. Pecuniary gain for Arthur and Lady Evelyn, whose inheritances promised liberation from fiscal and emotional shackles. Revenge for Eliza, Sophie and Jenkins, each scarred by Harrington's Machiavellian machinations, and secrets for Moreau, whose rivalries in the arcane world of antiquities concealed deeper enmities. Red herrings had proliferated like weeds in an untended garden, the misplaced glove evoking phantom intruders, the cyanide vials secreted in Arthur's chamber to implicate the heir, the feigned footprints leading to illusory escapes. Yet the Sapphire Mirror, that grandiose artifact of gilded filigree and azure profundity, held the pivotal revelation. Poirot approached it now, manipulating its angle to capture the morning light obliquely, unveiling the optical illusion that had eluded lesser minds. Faint inscriptions, etched into the wall behind and reflected only in specific rays, chronicling Harrington's confessions of past sins, the theft of Jenkins' family heirlooms in a duplicitous transaction decades prior, the ruination of Sophie's virtue in a Parisian indiscretion that left her adrift. But the hidden compartment, Poirot proclaimed, his voice rising in dramatic timbre, emptied not by theft, but by the victim himself in his final hours, concealing a newly drafted will that redrew the lines of legacy. This document, now recovered from its cunning cache, alters the motive's landscape irrevocably. The assemblage stirred with murmurs of astonishment, but Poirot silenced them with a raised hand. The perpetrator? Ah, it is one among you possessed of unfettered access to the tisane, intimate knowledge of poison's subtle arts, and a motive that transcends the others in its profundity of betrayal. Dr. Victor Moreau, you examined the body with undue haste, your medical expertise enabling the undetected administration of cyanide, dissolved in the tea with the precision of a pharmacologist's hand. Moreau blanched, his rotund frame quivering as Poirot unravelled the deception. Your professed envy of the Sapphire Mirror was mere misdirection, a smokescreen for the true impetus. Lord Harrington had unearthed your forgeries in the antiquities trade, artifacts peddled as genuine to unsuspecting collectors threatening exposure that would ruin your reputation and fortunes. The timeline bends to your will. You slipped from your guest chamber under the guise of solitude, traversed the corridors undetected, and laced the tisane in the kitchen's shadowed alcove before retreating. The cuts upon your hands, bandaged hastily, bear witness to your post-mortem forcible entry into the mirror's compartment, seeking the new will in frantic desperation. Poirot's eyes bored into Moreau's, eliciting a beads of sweat that traced rivulets down his florid cheeks. But the will's contents unveil the deepest secret, your illegitimacy as Harrington's half-brother, born of a clandestine affair, and denied inheritance through paternal disavowal. Revenge and avarice intertwined in a Gordian knot. Vengeance for the birthright withheld. Greed for the estate that should have been yours. The behavioral clues confirm it. Your post-mortem calm, unperturbed by horror, indicative of clinical detachment. The planted red herrings, the vial, the glove, to implicate rivals. Sophie's silenced testimony, for she glimpsed you near the kitchen, yet fear of your authority bound. Her tongue, and the attempted poisoning of Poirot himself last eve, your final desperate gambit to staunch the flow of revelation. The room fell into a profound silence, broken only by Moreau's laboured breaths. He collapsed into his chair, his bespectacled eyes glazing with defeat. "It is true, all of it," he confessed in a voice hoarse with capitulation. "He deserved it, for denying my blood, my rightful place. The mirror's secret was to be mine, the estate my recompense." Poirot nodded with solemn satisfaction, his moustache twitching in triumph. "Justice is served, monsieur. The Sapphire Mirror reflected not ancient curses, but the distortions of the human soul, greed's refraction, revenge's illusion. Order is restored to this chaotic tableau." The manor seemed to exhale in collective relief as the authorities, summoned by telegram, arrived with the clatter of carriages on the gravel drive. Statements were taken. Moreau led away in manacles, his portly form diminished by the weight of culpability. The suspects dispersed, their psyches unburdened, yet forever altered by the ordeal. Lady Evelyn contemplating a future of autonomy. Arthur vowing reform. Eliza embracing her thwarted dreams anew. Sophie finding solace in vindication. Jenkins, his legacy partially restored by the will's provisions. Poirot, gathering his belongings, departed the manor with the grace of a man who had once more imposed symmetry upon asymmetry. The sun bathed the countryside in benevolent light. The storm's vestiges banished, as if nature itself applauded the restoration of equilibrium. Dear listener, thus concludes Hercule Poirot and the Secret of the Sapphire Mirror, a tapestry of deception unravelled by the indomitable Belgian detective. We extend our gratitude for your engagement of the Grey Cells. Until our next enigmatic sojourn, au revoir.